Today on Ninchronicles, we'll take a look at Punch-Out, the original arcade game. Yes, it was really an arcade game at first. Far too often have I had to correct people who think that the NES Punch-Out is the original.
I'm having trouble beating Bald Bull on the NES Punch-Out.
You know, that's not the original Punch-Out.
I didn't even say that.
Yeah, I'm sick of playing with you. You know what? You can just go on your own.
We're playing Mischief Makers. It's not even multiplayer.
The first thing you might notice about this arcade version of Punch-Out is, who's that nerd with the green hair? Well, bad news, pal, because that's you. I'm afraid Little Mac didn't sport quite the same look he did back in the day. The other thing you might notice is how the game has dual screens, or DS if you will. One where the main game is, and one for all the stats. And of course you'll notice a lot of familiar gameplay too. Punching, dodging, guarding, losing, it's all here. Except you don't really have control over getting up from a knockout. Pounding on the buttons won't do anything here, you'll just have to hope you can get up again. Once your KO meter fills up, you can give your opponents a fierce uppercut. I don't really think it does as much damage, but it looks cool and it gives you a bigger score. So you're probably wondering, why even use two screens in the first place? Well, we can blame that on Donkey Kong. Being the hit game that it was, Nintendo is ordering a huge amount of television monitors to make more arcade cabinets with, but they found themselves with more TVs than they knew what to do with. So, the developers at Nintendo figured they'd make a game that uses two televisions to use up all the extra stock they had. Okay, that makes sense, you say. But why boxing? Well, at the same time a new substrate had been made that allowed developers to stretch and shrink objects, except it could only work on one object. After tossing around ideas such as a racing game on side-by-side screens, they landed on stacking them on top of each other and making a boxing game, with the top screen having the flashy pizzazz of a boxing match. And as for the substrate, that was used on the opponents. This is particularly obvious every time you lose and get stuck watching Bald Bull show off every freaking time. I'm going to beat you, Bald Bull! Beating opponents can be tricky, but like always, they typically telegraph their attacks. See when their eyes get all yellow? Don't let it fool you, they didn't just get a nasty camera flash, they're about to hit you. After beating up everybody the WVBA throws at you, you become the champion of the world! But it's not actually game over yet. You'll need to defend your title from people looking for a rematch. With everybody sporting new clothes and you sporting a fancy new gold wireframe, your opponents are going to be changing things up to avoid getting the same beatdown they had last time. Regular Punch-Out fans will notice that half the cast showed up in later entries, but there are some outliers. Unfortunately, poor Pizza Pasta was lost to history, never to be seen again. And as for Kid Quick here, well, that's a story for another time. Punch-Out is also notable for being the first game to be composed by Koji Kondo, the legendary music man who made the iconic Mario and Zelda themes. And this is his debut song. A shame it's not actually his. It turns out this little song is based on a jingle from a Gillette commercial. Yeah, Gillette, the shaving people. You see, they used to sponsor sports events in the 50s, and this little tune would play. Click here to check it out for yourself. Well, at least you're an original composition name entry screen. This version of Punch-Out never really managed to leave the arcades, but if you're lucky you just might find one yourself, though it might take some hunting. It wasn't long after this game that Super Punch-Out came out. No, not that Super Punch-Out. Yeah, this Super Punch-Out. We'll take a look at Super Punch-Out next time on Ninchronicles, and we'll examine the differences it has between this Punch-Out, as well as any other odds and ends from Punch-Out's arcade history. See you next time!
I want to be the shake button.
No, let me be Shake.
You can be the dash button.
I was Dash last time.